The day Obina lost his entire fortune, he expected his fiancée to hold his hand. Instead, she looked at the broken man in front of her and quietly asked one question: "How long are you planning to stay poor?" She had no idea that the collapse was a test designed by the very woman who wanted to know whether she truly loved him. Obina had been one of the wealthiest young businessmen in the city. He owned a powerful company, lived in a mansion, and was preparing for a wedding with Ujana, the woman he believed loved him. But his mother had always suspected that Ujana loved the lifestyle more than the man. So she made a dangerous proposal. Obina would pretend to lose everything. No mansion. No luxury cars. No money. No business empire. He agreed, certain that Ujana would prove his mother wrong. But when the news spread that Obina had become penniless, everything changed. Friends disappeared. Business partners stopped answering. Even Ujana began to question their future. Yet somewhere in the middle of his darkest days, another woman quietly appeared with food, kindness, and no demands. Her name was Amara. And unlike everyone else, she never once asked what Obina could give her. Before the test began, Obina sat across from his mother in the private study of their mansion. She looked unusually serious. "You are certain Ujana loves you?" she asked. Obina smiled. "I don't need a test to know that." His mother shook her head. "People behave differently when money disappears." Obina refused to believe her. He had seen Ujana stand beside him through difficult business meetings, family arguments, and exhausting days. To him, that was proof enough. His mother then offered him a deal. He would temporarily give up his wealthy identity and allow everyone to believe his company had collapsed. If Ujana stayed, his mother would admit she was wrong. If she left, Obina would finally understand the truth. Obina agreed, but he demanded something in return: half of the family company if he proved his mother wrong. His mother accepted. She added one condition: nobody could know about the test, especially Ujana. "I want her actions, not her words," she said. Obina laughed confidently. "Then prepare yourself to lose the bet." His mother simply smiled. "Perhaps. But remember, my son, the truth does not need to be forced. It reveals itself when comfort disappears." The next morning, Obina's carefully protected world began to collapse. The first sign came when Obina's company suddenly appeared in financial trouble. His executives received notices, the banks froze major accounts, and investors began demanding answers. To everyone watching from outside, it looked like a devastating financial disaster. Obina returned home and found his mother waiting. "It's time," she said. He nodded. Within hours, news outlets were reporting that the famous businessman had lost control of his company. His mansion was no longer available to him. His luxury vehicles disappeared. His bank cards stopped working. Even the people who had once surrounded him suddenly became impossible to reach. Obina moved into a tiny rented room with an old mattress, a plastic bucket, and barely enough space for his few remaining belongings. For the first time in his adult life, he understood what it meant to have nothing. Yet he remained confident. "Ujana will come," he told himself. Then his phone rang. It was Ujana. She had heard everything. Her voice trembled as she asked where he was. Obina hesitated before giving her the address. He wanted to see whether she would come without being invited twice. Hours passed. Then someone knocked on the door. When Obina opened it, Ujana was standing there. But the expression on her face told him this would not be the reunion he had imagined. Ujana stepped inside the tiny room and looked around. There was almost nothing there. Obina lowered his eyes. "I was ashamed," he admitted. "Not of you. Of myself." Ujana looked at him carefully. "How did everything disappear so quickly?" Obina explained that the company had collapsed and the banks had taken control. He told her most of his friends had stopped answering his calls. Then he asked the question he had been afraid to ask. "Are you going to leave too?" Ujana didn't answer immediately. She said she still loved him, but everything had changed. Their wedding plans had been built around a completely different life. The mansion was gone. The future they imagined was gone. And now Obina had no idea when, or if, he could rebuild. Ujana promised she would try to stay, but her hesitation worried him. Meanwhile, Obina's mother watched everything from a distance. She had expected Ujana to disappear quickly, but she did not. For several days, Ujana continued visiting. She brought small things and tried to encourage him. Yet her conversations increasingly focused on their future. "Love is important," she said, "but we also need stability." Obina understood what she meant. He just didn't know whether her fear would eventually become stronger than her love. Then Amara entered his life. She was not wealthy, famous, or connected to Obina's old world. She had met him through his mother and knew only that he was struggling. One afternoon, she appeared outside his small room carrying a simple bag of food. Obina frowned when he saw her. "Why are you here?" he asked. "I heard you were having a difficult time," she replied. "So I brought you something to eat." Obina immediately became defensive. He accused her of trying to impress his mother or gain something from him. Amara did not argue. She simply placed the food beside him. "You don't have to accept it," she said. "But I brought it because you need it." Obina stared at her. He had treated her coldly before, yet she had still returned with kindness. He finally accepted the food and thanked her. Amara smiled and left without asking for anything. That moment stayed in his mind. The next morning, she came again. Then again. Sometimes she brought food. Sometimes medicine. Sometimes she simply checked whether he had eaten. Obina couldn't understand her. In his old life, everyone had wanted something from him. His money attracted friends, business partners, and admirers. But Amara seemed completely different. And slowly, Obina began to wonder whether his mother's test was showing him something much bigger than the truth about Ujana. One evening, Amara made another offer. "Come stay at my father's house until you can rebuild your life." Obina immediately refused. He was proud and deeply embarrassed by his situation. He could not imagine entering another man's home as a poor man. Amara told him there was a spare room and nobody would treat him like a burden. But Obina remained stubborn. "I want to rebuild myself without depending on anyone," he said. Amara looked at him for a moment and nodded. "I respect that." She did not argue. She did not insult him. She simply told him that if he ever changed his mind, the door would remain open. After she left, Obina sat alone and thought about her behavior. She had every reason to walk away after the way he had spoken to her, yet she hadn't. Meanwhile, Ujana was becoming increasingly uncertain. She visited Obina, but her conversations were different. She asked how long rebuilding would take. She worried about bills. She worried about the wedding. She worried that poverty might not be temporary. Obina tried to reassure her, promising that he would fight to recover everything. But inside, he had begun noticing the difference between the two women. One was worried about the life they had lost. The other was concerned about the man sitting in front of her. He still wasn't ready to admit what that difference meant. Days turned into weeks. Obina searched for work, but his former position made ordinary jobs difficult to find. People recognized his name and assumed he would return to wealth soon. Others secretly mocked his downfall. Ujana continued visiting, but her patience slowly disappeared. One evening, she sat across from him and said, "I don't know how long I can do this." Obina's heart sank. You said you would stay. I said I would try, she replied. That single word hurt more than he expected. Try. As if loving him had become a difficult assignment. Ujana explained that she was afraid of struggling forever. She did not want to spend her life wondering whether the next month would be worse than the last. Obina didn't blame her for being afraid, but he couldn't ignore what he was hearing. Meanwhile, Amara continued showing up without promises or conditions. She never asked when Obina would become rich again. She never mentioned marriage. She simply helped where she could. One day she found him sitting outside, staring at the empty street. You look tired, she said. I am. Then rest. Obina smiled faintly. You make everything sound simple. Amara shook her head. It isn't simple. But worrying about tomorrow won't change today. For the first time, Obina realized that her kindness was not based on what she expected from him. It was simply part of who she was. The final blow from Ujana came without warning. Obina called her several times, but she didn't answer. When she finally arrived, she looked uncomfortable. I need to tell you something, she said. Obina already knew. You are leaving. Ujana lowered her eyes. I'm sorry. He asked her why. She said she loved him, but she couldn't live the life they now had. Obina stared at her in disbelief. So because I lost my money, you don't want me anymore? Ujana insisted it wasn't that simple. But every explanation eventually returned to the same thing: she was afraid of poverty. She had imagined a comfortable future, and now that future had disappeared. Obina's voice became quiet. You loved me yesterday. Ujana answered, things changed. He looked at her and realized that only one thing had changed. His money was gone. The man himself was still sitting in front of her. She apologized again and walked away. Obina didn't stop her. After the door closed, he sat alone and remembered his mother's warning. She had been right. Yet he also remembered Amara. She had come when he had nothing. She had offered help without demanding anything. She had even continued helping after he rejected her. Obina finally understood that losing his fortune had not destroyed his life. It had revealed the people who were truly worth keeping. The next morning, Obina left his room to search for work. He was determined to rebuild without asking anyone for money. But halfway down the road, a motorcycle suddenly swerved in front of him. Obina tried to move out of its path, lost his balance, and fell hard. Pain shot through his leg. He tried to stand, but he couldn't. People passed by without recognizing the former billionaire. For the first time, his pride disappeared beneath the reality of his situation. He reached for his phone and hesitated before calling anyone. Then Amara appeared. She had been looking for him after he failed to answer her messages. She found him sitting beside the road, struggling to move. Obina, she shouted. She rushed toward him and immediately asked what happened. He tried to tell her he could manage. Amara shook her head. You can't even stand. She wanted to take him to her father's house for treatment, but Obina refused. He didn't want her father to see him injured and helpless. Amara became serious. He will see an injured man, not a failed man. Obina had no answer. She helped him to his feet and supported his weight against her shoulder. You don't have to carry me, he whispered. Then lean on me, she replied. And for the first time, Obina stopped fighting the help being offered to him. Amara brought Obina to her father's home. Her father was a respected healer who immediately examined the injured leg. He warned that the swelling was serious and that a hospital examination would be necessary if there were signs of a fracture. Obina felt humiliated. He had once owned a massive company, yet now he was sitting in another family's home while people cared for him. Amara noticed his expression. "Accepting help isn't weakness," she said. Obina looked away. "I've been a burden since I came here." Her father immediately corrected him. "Nobody called you a burden." Amara agreed. She gave him water, food, and medicine while her father treated the swelling. Obina watched her quietly. She had no reason to do any of this. He had rejected her offer repeatedly. He had accused her of wanting his money. Yet she had never brought up those insults. Later that night, Obina apologized. "I'm sorry for the way I treated you." Amara smiled. "Forget it." He was surprised. "You don't hate me?" "No. Everyone makes mistakes." Those words stayed with him. He had spent his entire life believing strength meant never needing anyone. Now, lying injured in a modest room, he was learning that real strength could also mean accepting kindness. And somewhere outside that room, his mother was watching the test unfold exactly as she had hoped. Obina recovered slowly. Every morning, Amara checked his leg and made sure he ate before taking medicine. Their conversations became longer. At first, they spoke about ordinary things. Then they began talking about life. Obina told her what it felt like to lose his company and watch people disappear. Amara told him that money could make life easier, but it could never guarantee loyalty. One morning, Obina asked her directly, "Why do you keep helping me?" Amara answered without hesitation. "Because you need help. Even after the way I treated you? You already apologized. But you didn't have to forgive me." She smiled. "Holding anger won't heal your leg." Obina laughed for the first time in weeks. Their friendship grew naturally. There were no promises and no expectations. Meanwhile, his mother secretly observed the change. She was pleased, but she reminded Obina that the test wasn't over. "Don't let your feelings interfere," she warned. Obina admitted that he was beginning to care about Amara. His mother smiled. "Perhaps the test is already teaching you something." Obina knew she was right. Losing his fortune had shown him who left. But Amara's presence was showing him what genuine loyalty looked like. He still didn't know whether their friendship could become something deeper. But for the first time, he was no longer interested in finding someone who loved his wealth. He wanted someone who could see him without it. One afternoon, Obina's former life came back to him in an unexpected way. An old friend recognized him while he was helping Amara sort vegetables outside her father's home. The man stared in disbelief. "Obina? Is that really you?" Obina nodded. His old friend looked at the basket in his hands and then at the modest house. He could hardly believe the man who once commanded a huge business was doing simple work. "People change," Obina said quietly. The friend told him he had heard Obina had left the business world completely. Obina explained that he was starting again from nothing. The friend shook his head and said he admired his determination. After he left, Obina looked at the vegetables. "I never thought I would be doing this." Amara smiled. "Is honest work beneath you?" Obina paused. "It used to be." She asked, "And now?" He answered, "Now I think honest work has dignity." That sentence marked a turning point. Poverty had stripped away the pride he once carried everywhere. He began understanding how invisible ordinary workers had been to him when he was rich. He had never been cruel, but he had been too busy to notice their struggles. Now he noticed everything. A tired worker. A hungry child. A person asking for help. His wealth had given him comfort, but losing it had given him perspective. Just when Obina believed his past was finally behind him, someone from that past appeared again. Her name was Nadia, a woman he had known years earlier. She had once left him when he was still struggling because she wanted a more secure future. Now she had built a successful business and seemed to have everything she once wanted. When she saw Obina, she almost didn't recognize him. "You've changed," she said. Obina smiled. "So have you." Nadia told him she had heard about his financial collapse. She admitted that she had once believed choosing a wealthier life would make her happier. It hadn't. She asked whether they could talk about the past. Obina listened politely, but he refused to return to what had already ended. "I forgave you," he said, "but forgiveness doesn't mean going backward." Nadia looked hurt. She asked whether he would at least give her another chance. Obina thought about it before answering. "My heart deserves better than repeating the same mistake." Nadia accepted his decision and walked away. Amara had overheard part of the conversation but said nothing. Later, Obina told her what happened. She didn't judge Nadia or praise him. She simply said, "Sometimes people understand your value only after they lose access to you." Obina smiled. "And sometimes losing people teaches you to value the ones who stayed." Their eyes met, and neither spoke for several seconds. That evening, Obina's mother visited him secretly. She wanted to know how he was feeling. Obina told her about Nadia and admitted that he no longer wanted the life he once chased. "I thought losing everything would destroy me," he said. "But now I realize I lost things that were never truly mine." His mother asked, "And what did you gain?" Obina looked toward the doorway where Amara was preparing dinner. "Perspective. Patience. And maybe something more." His mother smiled but reminded him of their agreement. The test had to continue until the truth was undeniable. Obina agreed. He still couldn't reveal the secret to Amara. He didn't want her kindness to change because she discovered he was secretly wealthy. That night, he wondered whether he was doing something unfair by hiding the truth. Yet his mother insisted that revealing it too early would destroy the purpose of the test. Meanwhile, Amara was beginning to notice that Obina's personality had changed dramatically. The proud man who once refused every offer now thanked people sincerely. He no longer complained about ordinary work. He no longer judged people by their possessions. He had learned to appreciate small things, a warm meal, a conversation, a helping hand. Amara didn't know that the man she was becoming attached to was still secretly wealthy. She only knew the man she saw every day. And that was exactly what Obina had hoped for. Weeks passed, and Obina's leg finally became strong enough for him to walk without support. He immediately announced that he wanted to find work. Amara encouraged him. "Start wherever you can," she said. Obina nodded. He began helping local businesses with small projects, using the skills he had developed during his years as a company executive. The work wasn't glamorous, but it gave him confidence. He earned small amounts of money and saved every coin. His old life had taught him how to build companies. His new life taught him how to build himself. One evening, Amara found him calculating his earnings. "You look proud," she said. "I am." "Why?" "Because this money came from my own work." Amara smiled. "Then keep going." Their relationship became closer, but neither mentioned romance. Obina was afraid that his feelings might complicate the test. He also wanted to be certain that Amara cared for him as a person, not because she had become accustomed to helping him. Meanwhile, Ujana heard rumors that Obina was recovering. She began wondering whether she had made the wrong decision. Friends told her that his business might return. She remembered the life they once planned together. But Obina's mother refused to contact her. "Let him rebuild without interference," she said. Ujana eventually decided to visit him. She didn't know that the man she had left was no longer the same man she remembered. When Ujana finally appeared, Obina was outside working with Amara. Ujana stopped when she saw them together. She immediately noticed the difference in Obina. He looked happier despite having far less money. "I heard you were doing better," she said. Obina nodded. "I am." Ujana asked whether they could talk privately. Obina agreed. She apologized for leaving him when he was struggling. She admitted that she had been afraid and that she had made a decision based on fear rather than love. Obina listened without anger. Then she asked the question she had come to ask. "Is there someone else?" Obina looked toward Amara, who was standing nearby. "There is someone who stayed when I had nothing." Ujana understood. Her eyes filled with regret. "Do you love her?" Obina didn't answer immediately. He had not yet said those words to Amara. Finally, he said, "I don't know what the future holds. But I know I don't want to lose someone because my circumstances change." Ujana apologized again and left. Obina watched her disappear down the road. He wasn't angry anymore. He simply felt grateful that the truth had arrived before he made another mistake. Amara approached him afterward. "Are you all right?" she asked. Obina smiled. "For the first time in a long time, I think I am." She didn't ask what happened. She trusted him enough to let him speak when he was ready. The next morning, Obina received a message from his mother telling him to come home. He immediately knew the test was nearing its end. When he arrived, his mother was waiting in the same study where they had made the agreement. She asked him one question. "What have you learned?" Obina sat quietly before answering. "I learned that money attracts people, but losing money reveals them." His mother smiled. He continued. "Ujana loved the life I provided. Amara cared about the person I was without that life." His mother asked whether he regretted the test. Obina admitted that he regretted hurting people, but he didn't regret discovering the truth. Then his mother revealed that the company had never actually collapsed. The bank accounts were safe. The business had been protected the entire time. Obina's eyes widened. "So I never lost anything?" "Not permanently," his mother replied. She explained that the entire financial disaster had been staged to see how people would react. Obina sat in silence. He suddenly realized that Amara had helped a wealthy man without knowing he was wealthy. She had never asked for money, property, or promises. His mother then reminded him of their agreement. "You won the test." Obina smiled. "Then I don't want the company." His mother was surprised. He told her he wanted part of the money used to help people who were genuinely struggling. The experience had changed his priorities. Obina returned to Amara's father's home with a heavy heart. He knew the truth had to come out. He couldn't continue pretending forever. Amara was outside preparing food when he approached her. "Can we talk?" he asked. She looked at him and immediately sensed something was different. Obina took a deep breath. "I have not been completely honest with you." Amara became serious. He explained that the company had never truly collapsed. His mother had arranged the entire situation as a test to discover who genuinely loved him. Amara stared at him in silence. "So you were never poor?" she asked. Obina lowered his eyes. "Not really." She felt hurt, not because he was wealthy, but because he had hidden the truth. Obina apologized. He explained that if she had known he was rich, her behavior might have changed. "I needed to know who you were when you thought I had nothing." Amara turned away. She told him that she understood the reason, but being tested was still painful. Obina didn't defend himself. He simply accepted her anger. "You don't owe me forgiveness," he said. "But I want you to know that everything I learned about you was real." Amara looked back at him. "And what did you learn?" Obina answered, that you cared about me when you believed I had nothing to offer." She didn't respond immediately. Then she quietly said, "I never needed your money." Obina smiled. "That's exactly why I love you." Amara needed time to process everything. She had spent weeks believing Obina was a struggling man trying to rebuild his life. Now she discovered that he could return to wealth whenever he wanted. She wondered whether their relationship had been real or simply another part of the test. Obina assured her that his feelings had never been planned. "I didn't expect to fall in love with you," he said. The test was supposed to reveal someone's character. Instead, it changed mine. Amara asked what would happen now. Obina said he wanted to rebuild his company differently. He no longer wanted a life centered only around luxury. He wanted his business to create opportunities for people who had been ignored. Amara listened carefully. She asked whether he would return to his old mansion. He said perhaps, but only if he could turn part of it into a place that helped families in need. His mother supported the idea. She told Amara that the entire purpose of the test had been to teach Obina something money could never teach him. Amara finally smiled. Then maybe the test was worth something. Obina reached for her hand. "Only if you believe what happened between us was real." She looked into his eyes. "I do." For the first time, they allowed themselves to imagine a future together, not because of his wealth, but because they had already seen each other without it. Meanwhile, Ujana learned the truth about the test. She was shocked to discover that Obina had never truly lost his fortune. She realized that if she had stayed, she might have become part of the life she once wanted. But Obina's mother made something clear. "You left when you believed he had nothing. That decision was yours." Ujana admitted she had been afraid. She didn't try to make excuses. She understood that Obina had moved on. She wished him happiness and accepted that her chapter with him was finished. Obina later heard about her apology and chose not to hold resentment. He had learned that people make choices based on fear, desire, and weakness. Some choices cannot be undone. But they can be forgiven. His relationship with Amara continued to grow. She still challenged him when he became too proud. He still teased her about being stubborn. Their conversations were simple, but they were honest. One evening, Obina asked her whether she missed the days when he had almost nothing. Amara laughed. "I miss the man you became during those days." Obina smiled. "What does that mean?" She replied, "You learned to see people." He looked at her and realized that was the greatest gift she had given him. His wealth had never made him a bad man, but it had made him blind to certain truths. Losing it, even temporarily, had finally opened his eyes. Obina officially returned to his company, but employees immediately noticed that he was different. He spent more time listening to workers. He visited small offices instead of staying behind closed doors. He asked employees what problems they faced and what opportunities they needed. His mother watched proudly as he transformed the company culture. One of his executives asked why he was suddenly so focused on helping ordinary workers. Obina simply replied, "Because I know what it feels like when everyone stops seeing you." He also kept his promise from the test. A portion of his wealth was directed toward supporting families struggling with basic needs and helping small entrepreneurs start businesses. Amara became involved in the project, but she refused to accept money simply because she was close to Obina. She wanted to work for what she contributed. Obina respected that. Their relationship remained grounded in the same honesty that had brought them together. When people asked why he had chosen her, Obina never mentioned her beauty or her background. He said, "She stayed when she thought I had nothing." That sentence became the foundation of their relationship. His mother was satisfied. The test had not only exposed the truth about Ujana. It had introduced Obina to someone whose kindness had no price. And perhaps that was the greatest twist of all. The man who pretended to lose everything had accidentally discovered the one thing money could never buy. Months later, Obina returned to the small room where he had once lived during the test. He stood quietly at the doorway and remembered the fear, loneliness, and shame he had felt there. He remembered wondering whether his life was over. Amara stood beside him. "Why did you bring me here?" she asked. Obina smiled. "Because this is where I learned who I was." He told her that when he first entered the room, he thought losing money meant losing his identity. But the longer he stayed there, the more he realized that his identity had never been his bank account. He had been a son, a friend, a businessman, and a man capable of starting again. Amara looked around the tiny room. "You don't seem angry anymore." Obina shook his head. "I can't be. If I had never lost this life, even temporarily, I might never have met the woman who changed mine." Amara laughed softly. "So your mother was right?" Obina sighed. "Don't tell her that." They both laughed. Then Obina became serious. "I want you to know something. If I had the choice to repeat the entire experience, I wouldn't change the outcome." Amara asked why. "Because I would still want to find you." She took his hand. The room was silent, but neither needed to say anything more. Sometimes the hardest seasons in life are not meant to destroy us. Sometimes they are meant to reveal what truly matters. The wedding came almost a year later, but Obina refused to make it a celebration of wealth. Instead of an enormous luxury event, he wanted something meaningful. His mother initially protested. "You can afford anything," she reminded him. Obina smiled. "That's exactly why I don't need to prove anything." The ceremony was intimate, surrounded by family, close friends, and people whose lives had been touched by the work Obina had started. Amara walked toward him without diamonds covering her from head to toe. She didn't need them. Obina looked at her and remembered the first day she had brought food to his tiny room. She had known him as a poor man. She had helped him when he could give her nothing. Now she was standing beside him knowing exactly who he was, and she still wanted him. Before the ceremony, Obina's mother approached him. "Are you sure?" she asked. Obina smiled. "More sure than I was before the test." His mother laughed. "Then I suppose I owe you your reward." Obina shook his head. "I already received it." She knew what he meant. He didn't want more money. He wanted a life built around people who valued him for who he was. When Amara reached him, Obina whispered, "Thank you for staying." She replied, "Thank you for finally learning to trust." And with those words, the test that had begun as a question about love finally ended with an answer. Years later, Obina would tell the story of his downfall whenever someone asked how he changed. He never described it as the day he became poor. He called it the day he became awake. He remembered the people who disappeared, the woman who left, the strangers who ignored him, and the woman who kept bringing food without asking for anything. He understood that wealth could make people smile, but it could not tell him whether those smiles were genuine. His temporary poverty had exposed what comfort had hidden. Amara remained by his side, not because she needed his money, but because she believed in the man behind it. Together, they continued helping others. They funded small businesses, supported struggling families, and created opportunities for people who simply needed someone to believe in them. Obina's mother watched from a distance, proud of the son who had finally learned the lesson she had tried to teach him. One evening, Obina asked Amara whether she regretted ever meeting him. She laughed. "Only the part where you accused me of wanting your money." Obina laughed too. "I deserve that." Then she became serious. "But no, I don't regret you." Obina looked at her and remembered how different his life had become. He had once believed happiness came from having everything. Now he knew happiness came from knowing what mattered when everything else disappeared. The greatest fortune in his life was not the company, the mansion, or the millions. It was the person who stayed when she believed he had nothing. Obina's story became a lesson his entire family carried for years: never confuse someone's love for the lifestyle they receive with love for the person they share it with. When Obina's mother first suggested the test, he believed he already knew everything about the woman he loved. He was certain Ujana would stay because she had always stood beside him while he was rich. But when the money disappeared, the truth appeared. Ujana was not a monster. She was simply afraid of poverty and unwilling to build a life around uncertainty. Amara was different. She had no reason to expect anything from Obina, yet she brought food, offered shelter, helped him after his accident, and stayed even after he treated her badly. She never asked about his bank account. She cared about whether he had eaten. That difference changed him forever. Obina eventually understood that the purpose of the test was never really to discover which woman would stay. It was to teach him how to recognize genuine character. Money can buy comfort, influence, and beautiful things, but it cannot purchase loyalty. And sometimes, losing everything, even temporarily, is the only way to discover what you should have valued all along. Obina did not become poor forever. He regained his fortune. But he never regained the old version of himself. He became more patient, more generous, and more aware of people around him. And when someone asked him what his greatest wealth was, he always gave the same answer: the people who stayed when they believed I had nothing.